Okay, so today we're gonna continue our first session. We'll be covering HTML today mainly. We'll go through all the main elements from HTML4, and I might do a couple of elements from HTML5 like audio, video, and new inputs. So what did we start an HTML page with? What was the first thing we write? Yes, idoc type, and we write. So why did we say we want this? Why do we need it? Okay, so we need the idoc types because you have more than one type of HTML, because HTML is a type of XML. So you need to tell the browser what you're receiving is HTML. It's not pure XML, or it's not something else. It's HTML. You can tell it HTML4 or HTML5 or whatever. So let us start an HTML page. So the first thing we start with is the doc type, and you have doc type HTML, which covers all HTML4 plus HTML5. So if you have any HTML5 elements, you can use them and they'll work properly inside your page. Okay, then we talked about the structure of the page. There were there was a main tag, and inside it there are two main tags. Anyone remembers? Exactly. And what? Exactly. So we have the HTML tag, which is the main container for everything, and inside it we have the head and the body. Okay, so let us start with the head. The head, we said we initialize initialize everything in it, and it has some main things or content. Does anyone remember? Style. Yeah. What?
Title.
Exactly. Title, scripts, and styles. So let us start with the title. So here you write the title, which will appear on the top of the page, which is, let's say here, session 2. Okay, and if we run this, here we have it, session 2, which is the title of the page. Okay, so that's the first thing. We'll go into the styles and scripts later when we need them, but let us start with the elements, because we have a lot of elements for HTML. If you remember, we have certain types of elements which are either containers that can contain, or you can have other HTML elements listed within them. The most common one is the div, which is simply a box that will contain everything. Or you can also have tables, or you can have paragraphs, and so on. All these are called block elements because you have two ways of elements. The first one, which is the block elements, after they end with a new line. So when you write a div, if you write anything after it, it will go to a new line. While there are other elements which are called inline elements that you can write more than one of them, and they will all be on the same line. So here we have the div. Let us start with the div for now. The div is the main container for everything, and as we said, we have the opening tag and closing tag, and within the opening tag we can write attributes. We have, you can say, 4 main attributes that can be used for all the tags, which are ID, Here you can specify the ID which will be used either for the styling or for the JavaScript coding. So here let's say div1, div1. Then you have the second attribute that can be used for all tags, which is the class. The class is mainly used for CSS. You can use it for styling specific elements with or a group of elements with the same styling using the class attribute. So you can give it more than class, let's say class 1 and class 2, for instance. Now what the div will have everything that affects class 1 and class 2. The third attribute that is general for everything is style. The style is used to write inline CSS, because you can't really write HTML on its own. It's really integrated with CSS because it's the styling. You don't want a boring interface with plain text and nothing else. So if you want to write inline CSS, you can write it inside the style attribute. And the last attribute is the title, which identifies every div. It can be used for tooltips. So if you want a tooltip on something, you assign it in the title attribute. Okay, so these four attributes are the main attributes that can be used in all elements, whether divs, paragraphs, spans, links, or images, or whatever. So after that, you have specific attributes that can be used for different tags, and we'll go over these when we go over each one of these elements. So we said we have the div, which is the main container. And we said that it's a block element. So if we write here, this is the content of div1, okay, then we create another div and we write this is the content of div2, for instance. Okay, it will be shown on two different or on two separate lines. While if we use something like a span, which is an inline tag, here let's write span, 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 span. A span doesn't end with a separate line, with a new line, because it's an inline element. So spans get next to each other, all on the same line. But you can ask, what if I want to break or put a break or a new line between these two elements? It's not like you can simply just add an enter here and it will show here. There's a tag called break, BR. So a BR, it doesn't have an opening and closing tags. It's just one tag, and it will create a new line between two elements if they are in line. Okay. There is also another way that you can. Okay. We said that we have the divs are block elements. Each one is on a separate line, right? While span is an inline element, so they are next to each other. Okay. What if you want to use a span, for instance, multiple spans, and you want to add and put them on two separate lines, not all on the same line? You can just simply add BR, which is break. by adding the break between two spans, it will simply just, it's like you you put an enter, but because you can't really write an enter here, it's break. So break will make the two spans look like if they are divs so far. Okay, what if I want to use divs, but I want them to appear next to each other? There is also a way. So let's go back to having them as divs. Okay, here, these are divs. Okay, and I want them to appear next to each other. I can do that by simply giving it style. There's something called in the CSS a float. So here, if we write float left, and we do the same thing here, style float left. Now they are both on the same line. We can also change the float to, let's say for the second one to right. Now we have one on the left and one on the right. Simply float, it tells it where it should go, to the left, to the right. And if you write float none, like here float none, it went to another line. So you have float right, float left, and float none. Float none is the default. It tells it that no, don't go right or left, just break to a new line. While float left will tell it to go to the furthest left it can go, and float right will tell it go to the furthest right you can go without going to a new line. All good so far?
Yep.
Okay. So now we've seen how a block element behaves and how an inline element behaves. So let's try to cover more elements. Let's go to a table, which is very commonly used in a lot of websites. A table. Can anyone tell me what's a table? What is it? What, exactly, rows and columns. So table is basically rows and columns. In CSS, in HTML, you write the rows and then you write the columns inside them. So let's say I want a 3x3 table. We'll have a TR, which is a table row. Okay, we need 3 of these, right? So here we have now 3 rows, and within these rows I want 3 columns. A column is a TD. Okay. Yeah.
Not ideal TD inside the table.
No. The main structure is TR, and within you have a TD. Because usually you go when you name in a matrix. How do you say? When you say 5, 6, you mean fifth. Yeah, 5th row, 6th column. That's why it's a row then column. Okay. Now we have this 3x3 table. For us to see it, let's give inside the head, in order not to repeat the styles for each one of them. Inside the head we'll do style, a style tag. Inside it I'll just write any TR, any row. I need it to be, let's say, 200 have a width of 200 pixels, okay, and the height of 50 pixels. And let's give it a background black. Okay. Now all the rows are 200 by 50 and with a black background. While let's give the TDs, the columns, a width of, let's say, 30 pixels, a height of 50 pixels, and let's say red background. So if we try to see this here, okay, this is a 3 by 3 table with 30 by 50 pixels cells, or cells, and red background. But as you can see, we have a separation between the cells themselves, even though we did not define any margins or borders or anything. This is the default behavior of a table. It has some kind of spacing between the cells inside it. So you have something for the table you need to specify. So for the table, there is something called border collapse, and we'll give it collapse. Okay, I'll explain it just in a bit. Here, now you don't have any spacing or borders between the divs. So simply the border collapse, it has the default is separate. It separates the borders of all the cells. That's why you have spacing between them, which what we had separate. And then you have collapse, which tells it to collapse everything and put all the borders together. Thus you don't have any spacing between them. So in most cases you'll be using the separate, but just in case you need them to be really close to each other for some kind of reason, you can use the collapse. Okay. Yes.
We've done it for tables, so it will be done to all tables. Cannot specify for all tables.
Yeah, you can simply give an ID or a class for the table and specify it. So if, let's say, this has an ID of table 1, okay, and we have table 2. We don't have any borders because it's applied to any table. Let's say here, do you remember how did we specify an ID in the CSS? Remember, we have three ways to choose: either by the tag itself, div table trtd, or we have by the class or by the ID. You remember how do we separate between them? Okay, for the ID, if you want to specify something by its ID, simply just add a hash. Okay, a hash will specify an ID for the element. So here, let us choose table 1. Now what we will have is, we'll have the border collapse for table 1, which is the first table, while the second one will have the default, which is border collapse separate. And that's why we have each one different than the other. Which, if you have an ID or a class, yeah. So TD is general for everything, and for all the TDs in the page. But if you want something specific for a specific TD, you can just give it a class. Okay. We'll go further into CSS in the next session. I'll give you, there are about 12 or I guess more types to select, ways to select elements very specifically. I'll go through that in the next session, inshallah. So I'll give you something to try to do using tables. Can you build the UAE's flag using a table? So this is it. What I've seen is most of you did blocks or the cells all the same size and repeated to add to increase the width, or did not repeat and made it squared. Okay. So what I did here is a bit different. Here, as you can see, I only have 2 columns, but with two different widths. So simply here, I just gave them the same height and the border. Then I give the red part a 30 pixel and the green or white or black parts 100 pixels. And this is it. You can play, but it's easier and less confusing than having a lot of columns, just so you can have the aspect ratio. So you can simply just give it inline styling, the width that you need. Okay, all the codes will be posted later for your reference. You find it on the website. Okay, so this is it so far for the tables. Let's go into something else. I've told you before about that we have H1, H2, H3 till H6, which are headers 1 till 6. If any of you used Word, you'll have header 1 till header 6. So simply you use that for your own formatting. You use it throughout the website. You want all the titles of the pages to be the same. So you just simply put it inside H1 and give H1 styling. You want the subtitles. Let's say you have a blog. You want the author's name, which is the 4th header, to be in a specific styling, and so on. That's why the H1s or the headers help you through that. So there already there is default behavior or default styling for each of the headers. So if we do here H1, okay, and give it I, okay, and let's repeat it multiple times. Okay, and let's see this one. As you can see, header 1, it's obvious that header 1 is the main title, so it gives it the biggest font, and it goes smaller and smaller according to the priority. So here H1 is the default. As you can see, it doesn't give you a CSS. We did not make specific CSS for H1. It has default behavior, which is the font size, the margin before, after, and all the H or the headers are actually block elements. That's why you can, as you can see, each one is on a separate line. They're not inline elements, because usually you don't have anything on the same line as the header. Okay, so far we talked about divs, tables, and headers. There's something else which is called paragraphs, or the P element. A P is mainly just like a div, but it's not meant to contain other stuff. It's basically just for text. So you can put, let's say, a div inside it, but if you can see here, I don't know if it will show it. No, but it's not the default behavior for the paragraph to have a div inside it. Usually, if you have a big article and you want to divide it into parts, you divide it into paragraphs. From the name itself, it's a paragraph. It doesn't have something default for the styling, but it helps you to organize your text. As I said, if you have a blog, let's say, all the text should have the same styling, so we add it inside P's, paragraphs. Next, we have another thing that can organize your, another element that can organize your website, which is the ordered and unordered lists. So here, let me show you. We have something called OL, which is ordered list, and something called UL, unordered list. These two contain elements which are LIs, list item. They both contain the same thing, but the only difference is U or O. So what do you think is the difference between unordered and ordered?
The access to them? Access to them?
Not really. Exactly, yeah. So here if we run this page, here you can see the ordered list, it has numbers, while the unordered list, it has dots. So this is also the default behavior. You can change it, but it's easier for you to, in order to control your website or whatever you're designing, to have it as lists or unordered lists. A lot of people also use the unordered list for the navigation menus. You can simply have inside your navigation, even if you have sub menus, in navigation you can have an unordered list, UL, and inside it you have LIs, which are the options or the navigations, the pages. And if you want something inside, one of the LIs could contain another UL, and you can do a specific behavior for that. That can be controlled using either CSS, if you're good at it, or a lot of people do it in JavaScript, but actually it's better to do it in CSS. I might show you that next session, how to do that in CSS. So it helps you to structure your code a lot better. So far, any questions? Okay, good. After that, we have inputs. We all see inputs in all pages. You can either have inputs as enter text or a text area to write more than one line. Let's say to reply to a comment, you have multiple lines. Or you might have checkboxes, right? Radio buttons, drop-down menus, and a lot of inputs. There are a lot of inputs, ways to input data into the page, and they all are basically structured the same way. Inputs are inline elements, by the way, so they can go next to each other. So here you have the input, which covers everything, and how to differentiate between checkbox or radio or text or whatever. You have something, an attribute called type. Inside the type, you have a lot of types. Let's do the first one, which is text. Okay. Text is the basic input type that you see everywhere. You can write just, it's one line. If an input is input text, type text, it's just one line. If you want to have multiple lines of input, there's something else called text area. Text area can have multiple lines, and a default behavior in some of the browsers, Chrome for instance, it can be resized. Okay, so one line only, you have input type text. Multiple lines, you have text area. So you can use the text inputs in let's say in your website for login. Okay, but you have passwords for login, right? How do you make the text look like stars? Just simply change the type from text into password. Here, if we try to write now, it looks like a password. So these are two different types. Okay, in some websites you see inside the text area in gray it's written enter your email or email, and the second one password, right? Previously it was done using JavaScript. You use JavaScript, it writes it whenever the user clicks, it removes the text and you can input. If you go out of it, it writes the enter text here and so on. Now with one of the features of HTML5 is you can have something called placeholder. Placeholder is simply the watermark that will be written in case it's empty. So for the placeholder, let's write enter password. Okay. So placeholder, we write enter password. It will be the watermark. It will look grayish here. If you click, it's stay there. It's still there. Once you write, it's removed. If it's empty again, so this will help you to give the user hints on what to write. It will be more clear, other than they have always, if you have your form designed and you have the title of the text box on the left, he always has to match them, and if it's a long form, they'll get lost. So this way it's much easier. But this only works on browsers that support HTML5. So if someone is using an old browser, they won't be able to see this. Okay, these are two types of inputs. What else do we have? We have the checkbox. Okay, so a checkbox, it doesn't have a placeholder, obviously. This is a checkbox. Here it doesn't have anything, it's just a checkbox. How do you write info to it or anything? You just simply write next to it. Let's say checkbox 1 title. Any of these here. Okay. This is for the checkbox. What if you want to know, if you're from JavaScript or anything, you want to know which checkboxes are selected? You can simply do that by value. Value is what you can actually access and what will be selected when you check the checkbox. The value is what will be used on the server or what will be used on in the JavaScript. So here, let's give it value 1. Okay. And you can have multiple checkboxes. Let's give it 2, 3, 2, 3. Since they are in line, they all appear next to each other. So if you want them on separate lines, just add BR, and that's it. They are on separate lines. Okay, in your website you have checkboxes. You have select your skills from a set of skills. Select your hobbies. Select your whatever. You have multiple groups of checkboxes. Okay, you can do that here. You just give it a name. The name is like the group. So here, group 1, group. So all these are in the same group. This is for checkboxes. It might not matter a lot for checkboxes to have a group, but in radio buttons you do. You know, radio buttons, you have a lot of them, you can choose only one. That's the main difference between checkbox and a radio button. The main purpose of a group for a radio button is these 3 radio buttons are from the same group. You can select only one. While these 2 are from a separate group, you can select one of these. So here, you see, because they have the same name or group, only one can be chosen. But let's give them different groups, okay? 3. Now, you can select all of them because they're in separate groups. So it's always better to write proper names, not just group 1, group 2, in order for you to be able to use them better. Here, just for examples, I'm giving them any names. Okay, these are the main types of inputs: text, password, radio button, checkboxes. But with HTML5, they introduced also new types of inputs. If you're in our website and you want the user to enter a date, what usually happens is they have to write a date. You either do 3 text boxes, one for days, one for months, and one for year, or a list. And if it's a text, and you have to specify, you have, after they write, you have to check, is it proper date, is it really numerical, not letters, and so on. Now you can simply have something called type date. This will simply, here, it will simply give you the following. You click it, it will give you the built-in date picker. Okay, so here, if you select any date, it will just write it there. And you can still write a date on your own, like 15/12/2010. Okay. And it can be selected, or you can choose it from here. So now you have a better option. But if you write anything, it will just be removed. So it will do all the checking for you simply, and it will be much easier and cleaner. Yeah. Okay, this is one of the new inputs. There is another input type, which is color. Previously, it was a JavaScript or jQuery plugin that you have to use in your website, and from it will appear, and you have a lot of options, and you have to depend on the vendor to provide you with new features and so on. Now there is also type color. Type color will simply, when you click it, it will pop up the default selector. It's the full option. You can't have more than that, really. So you have here, or you enter it on your own. If you want them, you can enter it. Okay, now you have it, and you can get the value in hex or RGB if you're going to use it in your code. And one more new type of inputs is range. Simply you give it a minimum and a maximum value. So starting n, and it will give you this nice scroll to decide the range. So these three, all, as I said, only works with newer browsers that are supported with that support HTML5. Here, I don't know if it will give me. Yeah, you see here, it gives you the support. It's supported by all Chrome, Firefox, and Opera, which is good, but you need the latest version. You can look online and get all the list of supported features on all the browsers, either from W3 Schools, or just Google it. You'll find a lot of websites that will tell you all the HTML5 features that are supported in which browsers and which version of these browsers, and if it doesn't work on one, what's the replacement. Okay, so now that we covered the main types of inputs, we'll go into something that we can use the inputs for. Most of the time you use inputs to what? To enter some data that you will send it to the server and either put it in your database or anything. Okay, so this is the inputs. How will you tell them that these will go to there and which page? There is a tag called form. Okay, a form is simply just like a div. The only difference is what it has something called action. Since we don't have a server here, I'll show it online. So W3 Schools form. Here it is. So a form can have a name, as we said, and it has something called action. The action, there you enter the URL for the web page or the file that you will send the information to. So here it will send all the values of the inputs within the form. Here it's just one. Sorry, this one. It will send it to HTML form action.asp page. And you have something called the method. If any of you know in web, you have get, post. Those are the most known. You have put, delete. These are the methods that you communicate with. So get is simply you just send one data, one type of data, and it will get you information. While post, it will just send information. You can have multiple, so on. So here it will send the input type text. It has a name. This name is what will be used on the server to get the information. It will send its value to the server. We need a button to send to start the action or to do the action. It has to be of type submit. So this is one more type which is for buttons. It's submit. The submit will trigger the action, will get all the information and send it to that server, to that page on the server with all the values of the inputs that we have. So type submit, value submit, which is the text. Okay, so let us try the example they have here. This is the same as this. Let's say hi. Okay, the username is hi. Submit. Here it got it as user is equal to hi on the server, and it displayed it on a different page. Maybe if we do a session sometime later on servers, we can do more examples on forms. If we do PHP or Java or Python, we'll see. But for now, we're only covering the HTML part of it. So this is simply the forms. Yeah.
If I have two forms, for example, one with the username and with password, and I want just one submit button to take the two values.
Okay, and you don't make two forms, just make one, and it has yeah. You can have a form with here. You can have a form with two inputs or even more. It's just a form that will the submit button inside the form will send the information inside this form to that page.
Yes. Okay.
That's the main point. If you have multiple forms, that means you have more than one action,
Yes.
more than one page you want to send the data to. That's why you can create more than one form. But if you're sending multiple information to one page, you just simply write off everything inside the form. You can make a form contains all the page. It's okay. Okay. Any questions so far before we move on? Okay. Okay, let us now do some other examples for the rest of the tags here. Okay, so we have a lot of tags. We'll cover some of the most used. In all the websites, what do we have? We have a link that will take us somewhere else, right? A link is simply a, which is anchor point. An A is the link. How do you pass what page do you go to? It's an attribute called href. Okay, so the href, let's say http here we go, google.com. Okay, and inside the tag itself, whatever you write is what will appear to the user. So here, if you click this link, you'll go to Google. Okay, Let's run it. And it took us to Google. So simply you can just pass the link itself. But what if you want to go to a page within your own website? You don't have to pass the whole link. Just pass you're in page. Let's go to UAE flag. Yeah. You just write the file name if it's in the same directory. I mean, just write the file's name and run it, and it took you to that page. So if you wanted to take you to a different domain, just add HTTP / and then the website you want to go. Otherwise it will think it's in the same domain or in your own website. That's one. What else? We have an image. All websites nowadays have images, right? So let's say it's just image. We give it, it has two main attributes that should be there all the time, which is the source. Let's add a picture. Give it the URL, the full URL. And you tell here. Just give it the source, the URL itself, okay? And there's something else that is preferable to add, which is the alt. The alt is stands for alternative, which is if you have slow connection, in order not to have just an empty box, it will put text until the image loads. Let's say here Google logo. Okay, and let's run this. It put the picture itself. Let me switch off the internet and try again. Something so. Okay, something might be wrong because I didn't give it height and width, I believe. Let me give it. Yeah, the image has other attributes that are not in everything, which is height and width. Other tags you need to add them using the style or CSS. Here you can have them as attributes. So let's give it a height of 100 pixels and a width of, let's say, 200 pixels. Okay, or even without the pixel. Okay. Yeah. Now it shows, because before we didn't have height and width, so it was too small to show the text. If you don't have, the picture didn't load for some kind of reason, it was deleted or no internet connection, it will simply show the alternative text. Otherwise, it will load it with the height and width you gave. So this is a picture and a link. You can also add the picture inside the link itself. So here you have the picture, right? You click it, you go to the page you want. So if you put anything inside the link, anything inside it, if you click it, you'll go to the link itself. Okay, so these are two. I showed you the text area. I told you about the VR, tables, devs, forms, inputs. We have also span, which is, if any of you did, let's say Java, it's label, the same as label or anything. Label, just here, span, and you add whatever text you want inside it. Hello. It's just a container for text mainly. Of course you can add inside it whatever you want, but it's a container for text that is an inline element. So you have the paragraph P, it contains text, but it's a block element, it breaks, while the span, it's an inline element. So you can have here, they all appear next to each other because they're inline. So if you want them separate lines, you have to do a break. Okay, now we did those. There's also one nice element which is called an iframe. An iframe is simply a div or container that you can embed another website in. So here, let's say an iframe with the source, and let's give it a source as http Abu Dhabi. Okay, and let's run the page. As you can see, I just gave the iframe the source to our website. Okay, and you can see it here. This is our website. You can change the height and width. Here, I'll give it a height of 500 and a width of 1000. Okay, as you can see, you have a website within a website. Inception. Okay, as default you have a border for the iframe. It's the default, you have border, as you can see here. If you want to remove it, just simply say frame border is equal to 0. Now we refresh, and here you don't have any frame for it. Okay, so this way you can embed multiple pages inside your website. Or if you, let's say you built a registration form for something, okay, on a website, you just simply copy the link, put it in an iframe, put it in your website, so you'll have your page, and within it you have the registration link or the registration form. Okay, what if you want to have the iframe to display more than one page, depending on what the user does? Okay, there's a simple way here. You simply add a link, but instead of making the link transferring the user to a separate page, you can tell it to load the page within the iframe. Here, this is the iframe we had. Okay, we give it a name, whatever you'd like. Here we have iframe 1, and we have a normal href. Okay, an attribute for the href is called target. You will give it the name you give for the iframe. You're simply telling it to not to target the browser and transfer it there. No, target this iframe and make it go to that page. So let me run this page here. This is the default page. Okay, if I go here, it takes me to a different page. We're still in the same page, but we change the link of the iframe. Simply name and give it a target. Okay. Okay. So this is mainly the elements I wanted to cover today, but there is one more thing that mainly for best practices, as when to use a table and when to use a div. Okay. Before, everyone used to use tables for everything in the website. I mean everything. The whole structure of the website is pages. You have the header, it's a table. You have the content, it's another table. Within it, there is another table, and so on. This is good for some websites or for some parts of the website, but it's a bad practice for everything. So my recommendation when to use a table is whenever you have a grid or a matrix. Let's say you want to design a website that will show you a list of let's go to a blog example, or a list of the articles available. So you'll simply do a table, okay, and you'll make it, because it's mainly what, article name, that's a column, author, date, comments, and so on. So that's a table. But for other users, you can just use a div, especially with CSS. Once we go further into it, you can use divs. So try this. You remember the example we just did, which is the UAE flag, right? Can you try to do it using divs? This is it. Simply, as I said, the block elements finish with a new line, right? So since we need the red to be on the left, and we need other things to be next to it, so we give it float left, so it doesn't give a new line. While the other divs, it's fine for us to have the div, we want a new line for the other div, new line for the other div, so we don't give them any floats. Here we have the red one, we give it just height, width, background, and just float left. Then the rest, we just write them as is. We need the new line for them to break and go to a new line. Okay, so hopefully now everyone knows basically how to use most of the elements. I mean, as you can see, we had to use CSS in order to show what we're doing. We'll cover it more deeply next session, but for now, since we still have some time left, let me show you some of the new elements in HTML5. Okay, here there's a new element called audio. Okay, audio, as you can see, it's audio. Here, let me refresh. I have to give it. Do I have to give it source? Controls. Yeah. Simply, an audio tag has an attribute called controls, which is basically what controls you want to see. Here, if you write controls, you'll see everything: the play, the bar, and the time, and the audio. Okay, and you have something else called autoplay. You can either say autoplay to make it play by default. As soon as it loads, it starts playing, or you don't write anything and you have to click to play. This is mainly for the tag itself. If you want to define what the source of the audio file you want to play, source. Okay, inside the source you give it the link for the source itself. And why do we have the source inside the audio tag itself, not just another attribute? Simply because not all browsers support the same extension of audio files. You have MP3, you have OOG, you have I believe there are 3 types mainly supported. So here you can put multiple sources, okay, multiple sources, and give each source give all the sources dot, and the browser will choose the best appropriate one for it according to the sources available. Let me, since I don't have audio here, let me show you an example. Here, this is an audio with controls, and inside it you see 2 sources. You give it the type. Here you have OGG and MPEG. which is MP3 and OGG, and the browser will play whichever you want. Here you don't have autoplay, so you have to click to play it. So simply, okay, so this is it simply, and you can change the audio and the time and everything. Also, you can do the same thing for video. Is the same concept exactly. You have control, sorry, you don't have controls, you have the source inside, and you add all the sources and their types accordingly. So this is video and audio. There are also new tags in HTML5 that you can use. Yeah, I believe that's pretty much it for today. I hope you all get everything.